Oh, don't be fooled by her royal past. Yeah, she's posh. Yeah, she's rich. Concordia blends her ultimate pious past, her traditions, her olden grandeur, and all of her beauty. From old and into the new. Come, stay a while. Discover all of her exciting hangout spots. 'Cause here we pray. And here we work. Here we shop. And here we live. Welcome to Concordia's Old Town. Hi guys! Welcome to my channel, Lunatic Plays. I'm the lunatic who plays City Skylines 2, and welcome to Concordia, my European city dream. Today, we are making more monumental progress on our city, and if you are interested in checking out how this came to be, the link to the previous episode and the Concordia series are down below. So if you're interested to see how we got here, I'm pointing the way to the previous episodes. And back to the here and now. Today, we are tackling the final bits on our historic inner city center and adding in some modernity with hotels adorning our skyline and a sprawling shopping gallery coming right up. And before we get into planning though, I'd just like to actually say thank you so much guys. I'm seeing quite a lot of support for this series, and honestly, it's a really beautiful thing to feel so much like I'm a part of a community of City Skylines 2. So really a huge shout out to Reddit, City Skylines 2 forum, and to the wonderful modders which make this game so much better. And if you are interested which mods I am using, you can download the full Concordia pack with a save file of the current episode progress, a mod list, and an instruction on how to actually get it to work down below from my shared file on Google Drive. Please do actually let me know if there's any issues with it. I really want to make this series really accessible, and as accessible as I can, but I am human and I do make mistakes sometimes. So let me know if it works for you. If you want to check it out, it's there. So now that we've got our greetings and salutations out of the way, let's get into some planning. Alright, so today we are taking a mildly different approach to the design of our city, and that is going to be us taking each one of the three parts individually and completing it before moving on to the next one. So first off, I think the customs house is a complete no-brainer starter, as it's basically mostly done. It just really needs some detailing to go into it. And that is going to be a sprawling plaza up front and down the back, and some green spaces here and there until we are fully satisfied. We will mostly play it by the ear here. Next up will be our four courts district. Here we will need to take a more modular approach, as we have a couple of different components coming in to create this entire space. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm still undecided about the key site of this zone. I'm kind of battling myself between more tenements and the park, or both on a smaller scale. Sometimes when building in City Skylines, inspiration kind of comes into it in the moment. So this will be one of those types of situations. What I mostly need to see about is, after we incorporate our courts parking lot, how much actual space will be left, and then we can kind of work around with it, whatever feels best. and sometimes city skylines really do be like that. The east side of our forecourt zone is going to be our little skyline expansionism tourism spot. I want to include a little commercial mall here and a hotel tower, not too tall but enough to contribute to the skyline of our old town. Finally, I am leaving the most ambitious part last. Our grand modern shopping galleria will occupy this entire block down by the bridge. I want to incorporate a multi-story parking lot on the bridge side to a multitude of stacked commercial buildings into a grand mall with a massive concrete staircase on the avenue side and a round low tower bit by the roundabout. I've honestly have a pretty solid imagination of what I want it to look like, but let's see if the current game assets will allow me to make it happen. My main inspo is the Wrocławia shopping galleria that you can see here. But take this and apply it very, very, very loosely, okay? It's just a reference, it's not a guide. So I think now that we know more or less how we will proceed, let's just take it and run with it. Alright, let's get started with our revenue commissioners, and honestly, this old baby here turned out in its own right kind of like a palace, with sprawling gardens and lush greens all around, but despite being a tax collector building, I'm kind of loving the vibe. And we begin this by extending our surface networks and curbs as always, and now in real life there won't be as many curbs as I use, but I find that for the purpose of the game, they are real nice at marking out the edges for our surface networks, and I take the liberty to abuse them just a little bit. We already have a majority of sidewalks all around here, so extending those is a real no-brainer. Again, I am using the curbs to outline the spaces where we will include our plaza, whereas up front we have a pretty irregular shape and an elevated plaza out the back. We have a good amount of space here in the back too, so that's where we want to introduce the sandstone slab surface network. Concrete planters are a very handy tool to introduce as a divider into these plazas, and we utilize them here too, so that when we outline a more definite space, we can create something pretty special. And sandstone goes onto the plaza and cobble goes onto the revenue courtyards. This is a demarcating factor highlighting that this building dates back to the olden days when everything was made out of cobble. And now for the front-facing plaza, I experimented with a couple of different designs here. We have loads of grass space, which makes this building pretty unlikely for a financial institution, which normally I would associate more kind of like a stern, concrete types of spaces with. Not really this lush green, but as a mean to a compromise, I lowered a bunch of concrete into the two square-shaped spaces up front to have a proper plaza, and I kept the garden spaces to the sides of the building. I decided to line out the edges of the green spaces here with low shrubs, giving this a more manicured garden feeling, and lushed it out a bit with some flowers and greens around the corners. These lovely Greek pillars go into our plazas. I wanted to Europeanize this space as much as I could, so these kind of Romanesque/Greek pillars seem like the perfect way to go about it. I placed these yellow flowers atop of the pillars to hide some of the disappearing mud features and double down my pillars as flower beds, which is kind of cool if you ask me. Next up, we go in with the planters everywhere and move on to the fencing. So the elevated areas seem to be pretty high up, and we do actually have these wonderful white wall assets from the UK region pack. So I go ahead and line them up. I raise them up with Move It, Anarchy Lock It in place to create a little wall barriers around all of these elevated spaces. Front of the revenue building seemed a bit empty, so food stalls and kiosks go in this space. Our city certainly has a lot of street food, but honestly, I wouldn't have her any other way. I also added a bike stop for the revenue workers up front too, with a little roofing so that those rainy days, those rare rainy days, their bikes don't get wet. There are these walled entrances at the building sides, and I want to close their spaces off a bit, as this is the revenue government building, so we introduced these ironwork gates and fences to prevent regular pedestrians from getting in. We do need a little bit of security here, guys. I carry on the walls on the building's elevated spaces all around, providing additional walking spaces and extra pedestrian access via the gardens. And down the back of the building, I am imagining that this space must be a fantastic spot to work. I mean, you're in your boring revenue commissioner's tax job and you go out on your lunch, and here is this lush green space, plenty of discreet garden walking spaces, food stops, and our lovely French Quarter just across the street. I mean, what a life. I added an extra bike stop out the back, some fountain spaces, lamps, bollards, and more food stops. And finally, here it is. And now, side quest. So now for our side quest, we take the new fantastic asset from Fragnaut on PDX mods, which is this beautiful Viennese St. Stephen's Cathedral prop, and we need to find a great spot for it in our old town. Now, this was exactly what I was waiting for. And we found a spot for it together at the Concordia live stream last weekend, which it seems this is going to be an ongoing thing if you want to come and hang out with me as I build out stuff in Concordia live. Come hang out, and we typically talk city skylines but also react to true crime and philosophy lectures. It's definitely an intellectually stimulating kind of conversation. Except for it's not. But come hang out anyways, it's gonna be fun. For the church, we had to get rid of one of our parking lots, but it was the necessary evil. We lined out the area with curbs and the UK yellow brick surface network, detailed around it with some shrubs and benches, popped across up the front, and voila! Now, isn't it gorgeous? And moving on to our Four Courts district, I began by placing my skyline marker, which here is a static ploppable office, not too tall because it is going to be a lonesome tall building in the area. I don't want it to stand out too much. And it has a pretty solid base, which is something I actually really like about it. I ended up including a leisure tourism functional cube block in it to give it that kind of hotel feel, which is what I wish that this building functioned as. And we move on to the Avenue Strip, where we use these gorgeous modern green eco buildings, which I think that came from some sort of addition to the game, possibly the modern architecture pack. I am including this because I want to highlight this district as our commercial zone of the inner city center. They've got shops up front and apartment entries down the back, and for the location that we have here, this works absolute wonders. We've also popped in our parking lot for the courts, which is going to be completely walled off from public access, and that left us with an adequate space for some tenements. The park question sort of solved itself as we were left with an awkward small square space down by the apartments, and I decided to utilize this for the purposes of a park. Additionally, to compensate for a loss of a parking lot, I dropped the road going down the back of the hotel underground and onto another underground parking lot. Hopefully that works. Next up, we curb those roads and spaces and walkways and more. And our courts now finally take up the space where we can focus on some royal gardening. Now, I'm no Sully, I did not have a stencil, but I freestyled this manicured royal garden design onto our gardens, which I followed up with a gravel surface network to really make those babies pop. And it's given a royal residence, which got converted into a public judiciary building after some bloody revolution, a true European marvel. Now, I decided to keep up with the theme and apply the same concept to that small public park down the back of the court, keeping the sort of royal garden design in it, which prompts more lore. This area makes me feel like perhaps where the tenements and the hotel are used to be all part of the royal residence gardens once, but the land got progressively reclaimed as the city grew. You see this evidence of city expansion all around different European cities, and I love how this in particular was our little happy accident. Now for the hotel, I sort of wanted to introduce fountain water feature spaces up front, but I couldn't find water jets anywhere, so they're just plain still water features and a mixture of this lovely German brick surface network, which I am planning to utilize more in the more modern parts of our city. So we're sort of blending modernity with the historic past of Concordia. Next, we carry on with sidewalks, curbs, road markings, tactiles, and so on. Notably, the courts get a French orange brick surface network, giving the whole space more warmth, a cobbled parking lot for those medieval vibes, and a red German brick entrances upon the modern city apartments that we've placed in. I really love this area, and it's possibly the most upmarket housing in our inner city center. I spent a good amount of time working away on those keys, which I decided to add a scenic bike trail route all along the southern quay area, and this prompted me to remove some existing detailing on the west wall quay, but I felt it was more a worthwhile investment. As I was working away on the quay area, I decided to opt in for another tram stop roundabout solution and include a bunch of pedestrian underpasses, providing access to both sides of these roads, of this avenue, and this has left me with this gorgeous little romantic square public space at the street corner. Some sandstone slabs, a little fountain later, some concrete planters, dividers, and a teeny-weeny green space, and what a vibe it is. And finally, we detail using benches, shrubs, trees, decals, bollards, lamps, planters, and so on. Paying extra attention to the public park by the apartments, introducing a custom playground area, a doggy park, and finally we have done it. Alright, moving on. So the shopping gallery actually turned out better than I thought that it would. Overall, I'm quite intimidated by merging buildings together to create unique spaces. Like with the churches, I honestly much rather would wait for an asset to get released than mess with it myself. But for this one, the space we had was so unique that we could only come up with something ourselves. And to be honest, it's much easier to play with commercial and office buildings than it is to make something as whole and as decorative as a church. So this felt more comfortable for me to be able to play with it. And I began with inserting our multi-story parking lot down by the bridge. I feel that this is quite a hidden back alley area, so it's perfect for this purpose. And we have a pretty limited space, so a multi-story asset is perfect. It's exactly what it needs. I thought of making one myself using parking lot roads, but the challenge of it kind of overwhelmed me, and the ready asset was there and available, so I used it. I also knew I wanted this road office tower thingy this round office tower thingy up front in that awkward triangular corner by the roundabout, which I lowered down to limit how high it stood. Now all that we need is to link everything up. I also really like the United Mall asset, so I opted in to use its static ploppable version, knowing I'll be changing its shape quite a lot. And stacking two of these crisscross style with one slightly higher than the other created an interesting shape for this zone. Now all that we actually had to do was to hide the awkward corners and all the awkward edges. And for that purpose, I used these Japanese low commercial buildings, which are honestly perfect. They are highly recolorable and have a very simplistic design, which makes incorporating them into a stacked, modular, fully custom build like this a lot easier. I also used some high-density commercial and office buildings to fill up the second and third story space between the round tower bit and the main bulk of the mall. This has left us with a good little spot for our staircase, which block after block after block, each step by step, I layered them in, which by the end I crossed it off with a concrete planter divider, giving it a slightly brutalist vibe, and lowered an angled fence to create barriers, which I adorned using these decorative chimneys. And here it is. And now that I had the bulk of it done, I wanted to utilize all the modular open spaces around the building, so I went in with a lot of food courts everywhere, notably at the roof, where I plopped more Japanese commercial low-rise entrances, recolored to match the main building, and offering balcony access to a massive rooftop food court, which I honestly would be hanging out at myself. And what is a mall without a shit ton of advertisements? So I go in and hang them literally everywhere. Oh, and I included this pedestrian bridge between the parking lot and the main bulk of the mall for just something little extra. And honestly, I did not expect it, but the pedestrians are using it. So that's kind of great. As I began outlining the outer curbs and spaces, I included some adjacent area cafes using mostly the Japanese commercial assets. A wee petrol station, as they typically can be found in the vicinity of a shopping mall in Europe. Don't know if America as well, but Europe, yes, they're there. And I detailed around them with the curbs, making the whole space kind of come together and ready to take the surface networks. I really love the UK white wall as my green space fencing, so I placed it all around my green spaces, outlining my footpaths and plazas and stuff. And finally, some planters, decals, bollards, road markings, textiles, fountains, benches, lamps, and more. Later, we could see the zone complete. Notably, I added a taxi bay ramp down by the parking lot for an easy mode of transport. I added some roofed bike stops, lots of open hangout spots, and a few cafe-adjacent eateries. As this is a commercial zone, a whole bunch of ads really made it come to life. And for this, I used the petrol station signs, which I lowered down to only show the large logo, up the top, which made it seem like one of those digital ads that you generally see around streets adjacent to malls. And finally, here it is. Okay, so let's review, everybody. Today, we made some monumental progress on our city. The Upper City Center is really taking its shape. We began at the Revenue Commissioners, which honestly could be a botanic garden or a palace with how lush it is. But I feel it really does suit the city. We've also gone off on a side quest to adorn our city center skyline with this gorgeous cathedral. Now look at just how well it stands here. What a mighty asset. The Four Courts district is a real blend of old and into the new, with the skyline-defining hotel standing tall amongst other buildings. The historic courts and their adjacent gardens, which then transition into the tenements down by the back, really comes together to create a very, very unique space for our city. And finally, none of it would be complete without our shopping gallery. My first project of such a caliber, and I think I actually killed it. I love how the buildings came together and what a statement this gallery makes in our city. My favorite are possibly the rooftop food courts, but each side of this building offers a completely unique perspective and vibe to the whole of inner city center of Concordia. And next up, we will take a look at our docklands and the tiered dockland park, as well as completing the rest of our lower city quay. Hell yeah! Next time we will finally see the inner city center of Concordia complete. Which reminds me, if you want to play Concordia for yourself, the link and the instruction is down below in the description, alongside the mod list and links to previous episodes of the series, so check it out for yourself. And now I'm saying my farewell, my friends. If you like this, like, subscribe, drop a comment, let me know that you're watching down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Thank you so much, and bye-bye!